me see if I can switch. Okay. So next presentation is about the Dasharo-related projects and its roadmap. So essentially right now we have two main Dasharo-related projects. There is Dasharo Toolsuite, which I will talk about. Currently, the recent release was 1.2, and there is plans for 2.0. So I will talk about that. And there is a tool which gets some interesting traction on Reddit and various other places, which is called Dasharo Openness Score. And I will tell a little bit about that. We get to the release 0.1, and there is already roadmap for 0.2, and yeah, so that's what we will talk about. So Dasharo Toolsuite is our kind of Swiss Army knife Linux distribution, which you can boot directly from the boot menu in the Dasharo in the Dasharo BIOS. And you can learn about this Linux distribution. Everything is open, like the source code is open. You can build it yourself from source code, and we essentially use it for a couple things. First of all, we want to have some tool which dealing with all the things that the open source firmware community member user will have to do. So first, of course, first thing is the initial deployment of the Dasharo to the main board. So we're using DTS to do this deployment. And to simplify this deployment, this is essentially you booting this DTS and just like running one option, and you have deployment. There are other features like hardware compatibility list report, which gather the logs and send these logs to us, so we can then in future analyze what kind of platforms support that. Maybe some hardware had problems with that, so we have some details about it. There is also ability to recover your system in case of either you don't like Dasharo or something was broken. You can get back your BIOS with the proprietary BIOS and flash it back. We would like to have user-friendly interface. Right now, we cannot say we are very user-friendly, but we're trying. And I guess the very good example of shiny, beautiful interface is from Mr. Chromebox and his firmware update utility. And yeah, because his license allow that, we probably will use this kind of terminal UI to have this like better user-friendly interface to handle various operations related to the firmware. And then finally, the vision is to have some diagnostics and system verification tool where we can check the trustworthiness, like do the attestation of the server, do some platform security provisioning if needed. I guess to some extent Heads does it, like because got tools for provisioning. So this we probably will have this mutual technology development and think about what kind of like mutual gain those projects may have. But the vision for the DTS is essentially to be a system for deployment, provisioning of security features, attestation, not only just initial deployment of the firmware. So the last release was planned for March 2023. We essentially released in 10th May. The changelog consists of firmware update options in the DTS menu. So if you have Dasharo already on your device, you just going to the DTS, booting over network on booting from the USB, and you just clicking one option, and this essentially fetch the BIOS images from our server and flash it. Of course, some people don't like it because like this may be not exactly secure. So some people want to have Dasharo firmware image, Dasharo Toolsuite image to be flashed on USB, which already include all those updates. We're thinking about that. I guess this is a good idea. We probably will do that, but right now it is like it is. We just added the update option. Yeah, so yeah, we updated the Dasharo the DTS, so you can get all the latest releases, because at some point it was tied to very old release. Right now it's like it can get the most recent release, which is prepared for the deployment using DTS. Then there was a problem with the SSH server. There is SSH server there, and of course, like it was enabled by default, what was wrong. Marek pointed that out, and we just disabled it. And there is some option you can just enable it if you need it. We just have it because it was very useful to deploy the binaries and for testing purposes and so on. As always, like forget to nothing malicious, forget to disable. Yeah, there was improvement in version comparison because we had this problem of working with people where we're trying to send them some release candidates or some development version. Yeah, so those can be already deployed, and the scripts were fixed. Yeah, so we added the flash ROM logs, and we also enabled the IXGBE driver, so we can boot the DTS on the X11 Supermicro server, and some minor fixes in the CI workflow. This is how the menu look like right now. So we essentially can do this hardware compatibility report. We can restore firmware from the hardware compatibility report, I guess either local, either remote one. We can do the loading of the entry subscription keys, which we will use for the updates. Then we can update the Dasharo firmware and other stuff, like we can go to shell and that's it, part of the system. So what is important, like when we gather this hardware compatibility list reports, we would like to have CI which can consume automatically those reports and extend the Dasharo universe documentation to include in the table information. Okay, this CPU was tested, that CPU was tested, that memory was tested, that GPU was tested, because those are information that people always looking for. In case of plans, we plan in Q3 version 2. There is a GitHub milestone. I guess in the presentation you can get to the link, but you will find also under GitHub Dasharo issues milestone. You will find the milestone which is for version 2. We hope to have a QEMU image where we can test the DTS just like without using hardware. So this should speed up validation of some features. Of course, the UI stuff that I told you already about. Then we plan to enable this zero-touch deployment, so one-click deployment for the Dell Precision 1650. I don't know if, like, first of all, we will enable it, but then still there may be just release candidates or dev versions of the builds. So either you will have to do your own build, either wait for the release of Dasharo. Yeah, some logo would be great to promote the project, and nightly builds help in using the most recent features. The long-term vision and features that we would like to incorporate is device authentication to improve Dasharo firmware update. So we would like to get rid of this entry subscription keys or whatever methods like we're using, which are kind of cumbersome and problematic. We would like to switch into the authentication based on the certificates which are delivered, or even maybe on some special information that given Dasharo deployment has, and then authenticate with the server. Ideally, in long run, this would be DRTM based attestation and then authentication, but we will see how this will happen. Then there is this problem of ever-growing DTS image. Of course, like if we want to add new tools, then image is growing. It's hard to boot it over the network, so we have to invent some method of slimming the image, but also having some way of adding new tools, adding more tools for various reasons, for diagnostic purposes, for the deployment purposes, for various reasons. So one idea is to have ability to connect network file system. I don't know if this is a good idea. There is discussion in the issue 366. What could be a good approach for that? So there is also a cool idea with this, with the DTS zero touch initial deployment for the firmware as is. So what does it mean? So that means essentially core boot deployment or any other open source firmware deployment on the device, this deployment is not based on the binary coming from Dasharo team. So it's like a random build, you can say, but some people just want to try and want to have easy way of doing this. So if we would be able to gather information from the system, create a config, build a BIOS, build an open source BIOS for this, and then flash it, I guess this would enable a lot of people, and that would be first stage. I guess the future stage would be the Dasharo certification program, where we can essentially fix bugs and all the problems that are discovered by these as-is deployments, and then create a Dasharo images if, of course, there is enough market for that. Then Dasharo security features provisioning and attestation. I already told you about that. There is also a GitHub issue for that, but this is long story, and I don't know when we will get to that point. But those are the ideas, and if anyone want to help, like, please chime into the issues discussion. The next project which we decided to do, which we think is very important, we started with MSI and then expanding, for example, to Nova Custom, is Dasharo Openness Score. Is a tool which is designed to quantify the openness of the firmware images. Of course, like, there are various places, even linked on the openness score related issues, where people discussing how this can be done reliably. So Ron said there is not good method, there is no ideal method. I guess at some point Mr. Chromebox saw this approach and say that he don't exactly like this way of measuring things. But on the other side, like, we can endlessly discuss which method is better, which method is worse. We have to do something and then maybe iteratively improve it. So the tool is written in Python. It's permissively licensed under MIT, so everyone can fork it and do whatever they want with that. And the goal here is to create a universal standard for judging how open is the given firmware image. And I guess, like, we mainly care about the Dasharo releases and showing that the proprietary release or vendor release was this kind of openness, zero openness typically, and our release is this kind of openness. Yeah, so we can quantify somehow, and there are some graphs I will show on the next slide to compare some builds. Then other thing is, of course, visual clarity. We have to provide some appealing look and feel so people understand what they see on these images. It is not that easy. It's not so simple because we are engineers and tend to go into some nitty-gritty details of the of what we see. And for regular user, this may be not the best way. So we have to still improve the visual clarity of what we present. Then we would like to have this integrated in CI/CD pipeline, but of course CI/CD needs some maintenance, like it have to run. We would like to introduce new version of the openness score, but we would like to make it kind of standard part of the release process, of Dasharo release process. Then, of course, certification component. I hope that this can be a pivotal element into Dasharo certification program. As I told you already, there are some criteria which we build. I guess there will be various grades of certification, but we have to have some certain openness when we want to certify something. Yeah, sure. Then transparency in open source. We would like to have some clear measures and some apple-to-apple comparison when we're discussing openness of various things in the ecosystem. So that's something that we care about. So at the end of May, we released version 1, 0.1. Yeah, so I guess, like, this is very detailed changelog. What is important, like, we can parse the core boot images, the UEFI images. We understand the fmap. We understand the various regions inside the BIOS. and then can, based on that understanding, assign if those are regions which are containing proprietary stuff or open stuff. Yeah, so there were some tools that we used, the CPFS tool, the UEFI extract tool. I guess to some extent we have similar features to Fietka editor because we had this discussion with Daniel about that. But this is essentially dedicated to creating a visual representation of the openness. Then we have this like algorithms for categorizing, which this is open, closed, or maybe this is just data, which is like neither open, neither like data format can be open, can be closed. But then we have to judge if this is how we classify that. Yeah, I guess I said most of that. Then we can, of course, illustrate that with the graphics, with the percentage share of each type of the component. And of course, we can also generate some comma-separated value file for machine processing if someone needs. So this is example of MSI. On the right side, we have UEFI image code openness for vendor BIOS. Yeah. So we see like it's completely closed source, like it's essentially closed source, 100% closed source. And then on the right side, on the left side, we have Dasharo version. Of course, this is not much impressive because the FSP and the management engine takes a lot of space, and it's a lot of code, and it's probably a lot of work to create the open version of that. On the other side, for 3MDev, for Dasharo team, part of this code which is shown here as a closed source is open because we have access to FSP source code. But anyway, what I want to say is that you see like what kind of stuff, how much you're gaining and how much still you miss to get full openness of this image. This example is, I guess, like way more interesting for especially those privacy paranoid or privacy conscious, and so the discussed KGP D16 is like 100% open source stuff. Yeah. Then there is head stuff. I guess this 2.1% is this minimized ME, or I'm not sure which. I don't remember what is this 2.1%. I guess Thierry or Michał can tell us that. But anyway, that's the comparison of the heads X230 with the KGP D16, and that's so we essentially seeing this evolution where back in the days we could have 100% open source. Today we have like 50%, almost 50% open source, which is like the difference is huge, I would say. Okay, so the version 02, what we're planning for the version 02, which hopefully can be released in Q3. Yeah, so Thierry is saying it's ME. Yeah, so not ME. The ME is not measured in this statistics, but there is something which is to microcode. Okay, that's fine. So the microcode is the blob which takes this 2.1%. Anyway, about version 0.2, essentially we would like to improve the visualization. The visual representation is like as you saw. Of course, there are more graphs and there are some tables, but we can do better, and I hope we will do. Then CI/CD integration that I told you about. Then we would like to include the openness score in various places, like present this as a part of Dasharo user group. Oh, there is new platform. There is this roadmap, and on this roadmap there is this platform, and this platform will gain this kind of openness level when it will reach this version of Dasharo. So that's something what we want to do. We would like to include that in the newsletters with the updates. Then we would like to compare Dasharo binaries with reference binaries. That's obvious, like because we want to show the value of Dasharo and probably other firmware frameworks. Then documentation have to be improved, especially that we would like to have all the stuff, how the Python script works, public, so the users can go there and look into it. And if there is any developer, Python developer, feel free to contribute to this project. More measures we can get, more bigger database we can build, more interesting discussion can be, and more analysis about what we should choose as a trustworthy computing device. Yeah, so versioning, of course. Yeah, sure. I'm finishing. That's essentially last slide. Yeah, and more parsing stuff, which is important to understand other components, better understand the components of the firmware. And that's essentially it about the openness core. And I guess we can switch to Wessel.